70 on gold and 1,500 on silver. And obviously that is one good sample of the best looking stuff from here. But
very, very selective.
Very selective, but that's the potential we could be looking at.
$900 from a river everyone abandoned. $1,400 from one nugget on worthless ground. Decades of gold trapped inside an illegal structure that miners walked past for years. These are Dan Hurd's most shocking discoveries ever. Not hype, not clickbait. Real gold, pulled from real locations, documented on camera for over 1 million subscribers to witness. What makes these finds shocking isn't just the money, it's where he found them. Places that 30,000 gold rush miners picked clean. Claims that experienced prospectors dismissed. Ground that everyone assumed was exhausted a century ago. Dan Hurd found gold in all of them.
I got a signal way up here somewhere. Started moving rocks and digging down. Can you see it down there? It's just sitting right on the surface now. There is a beautiful flake of gold.
And here's what makes this story even more incredible. Dan isn't a professional miner backed by million-dollar equipment. He's a high school shop teacher from British Columbia's Okanagan Valley, a man with a gold pan, a metal detector, and an ability to read the land that veteran prospectors can't explain. His discoveries have forced the prospecting community to ask an uncomfortable question.
I've got to investigate this claim a little bit more, see what else the old-time miners have left for me.
How much gold is still out there, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone patient enough to find it? By the end of this video, you'll see exactly what Dan discovered, where he discovered it, and the methods that led him to gold where everyone else found nothing. But first, you need to understand who this man really is, and why his finds carry more weight than the typical viral gold video. Who is Dan Hurd? Dan Hurd doesn't fit the stereotype of a gold prospector. There's no grizzled loner living off the grid, no desperate treasure hunter chasing get-rich-quick dreams. Instead, there's a metalwork teacher from the Okanagan Valley who discovered that the rivers of British Columbia offered something he desperately needed: peace of mind. Dan grew up in Pickerton, a small town of about 30,000 people tucked between two lakes in one of Canada's most beautiful regions. His father was a mechanic. His mother worked in real estate. Both made it a point to get their children outdoors whenever possible. At age 10, Dan's father took him prospecting for the first time. That single afternoon planted a seed that would grow for decades. But it wasn't until much later that prospecting became more than a hobby. It became therapy. His wife Dana has watched the transformation up close. Prospecting has been fabulous for Dan's mental health, she explains. After a long winter, he's itching to get back out there. He spends weekends mining, and he's a happier person for it.
I arrived this morning at about 8:30-ish. It's probably about 6 o'clock right now. It's been a long day. I really want to make that quota. 3 pickers for the day. But honestly, I'm happy, even if I only get the 1. Or 2, I guess. 2.
The rivers became his escape. The methodical work of panning, the rhythm of swirling water and sediment, the focus required to read the land, quieted the noise in his head. Gold wasn't just treasure, it was a reason to get outside, to solve puzzles, to connect with terrain that most people never notice. Fellow prospector Pete Bricker has accompanied Dan on countless expeditions. He's watched him work in conditions that would send most hobbyists home, and he's seen results that border on inexplicable. We call him the gold hound, Bricker says. It's incredible how he's just got a nose for gold. He understands the lay of the land really well, what kind of rock to look for, what kind of conditions in the environment. Bricker pauses, searching for the right words to describe something that defies easy explanation. Prospecting can seem more like an art than a learned skill at times. Dan is a great teacher, but he's got an innate sense that's hard to describe. That innate sense, combined with years of methodical study, has led to discoveries that have shocked even veteran prospectors. Dan started uploading videos to YouTube in late 2013. His first video featured a simple trip to Peachland, British Columbia. No fancy editing, no dramatic music. Just a man with a pan explaining what he was looking for and why. Today, his channel has over 1.3 million subscribers. His videos have accumulated tens of millions of views, and his discoveries have become the stuff of prospecting legend. But the numbers don't tell the real story. The real story is what he keeps pulling out of the ground. The shocking discovery. To understand why Dan Hurd's Fraser River discoveries are so shocking, you need to understand the history of this waterway. In 1858, gold was discovered in the Fraser River Valley. The news spread like wildfire. Within months, nearly 30,000 miners flooded into British Columbia, transforming the region almost overnight. The Fraser Canyon between Hope and Yale became ground zero for one of Canada's most intense gold rushes. Those miners were thorough. They worked the riverbanks with picks and shovels. They built sluices to process massive quantities of gravel. They dug into every crevice, every crack, every promising pocket of sediment. When the rush ended roughly a decade later, the conventional wisdom was simple. The easy gold was gone. The Fraser had been picked. Clean. For over 150 years, that wisdom held. Then Dan Hurd arrived. On a remote stretch of the Fraser River, about 2 hours northeast of Vancouver, Dan holds a half-kilometer claim that has become his most productive ground. The terrain here is different from typical riverbanks. Long striations of shale rock form endless nooks and crevices along the water's edge.
This trough would have held so much material when it was the bottom of the river, and all of that material had to go somewhere. May have gone down the trough farther, but because there's this gap here, we think it came down and went down and deposited down there.
These geological features create natural traps for heavy material. Most prospectors walk right past terrain like this. They see broken rock and muddy gravel. They see difficult footing and unpromising ground. Dan sees opportunity. On a spring morning, with the Fraser running muddy and fast from mountain snowmelt, Dan waves his metal detector over a patch of sandy soil. The machine shrieks, that distinctive electronic squawk that signals something heavy hiding below the surface. He drops to his knees, his bare hands dig into cold, wet gravel. Black sand, the telltale indicator of gold-bearing material, clings to his fingers. Then the nugget emerges, multigram. Smooth as a river stone, ancient. Dan holds it up to the British Columbia sunlight, turning it slowly, examining its surface. His voice carries a mix of excitement and scientific curiosity. The last nugget I pulled was really smooth, really old, he explains later. That means it was deposited probably thousands of years ago into the bottom of the river. He's been trying to understand the geology of this specific location. Is the gold being eroded out of quartz seams embedded in the large rocks? Or has it simply been washing downstream for millennia, settling into these shale crevices whenever the river slowed? The answer matters less than the results. From this single claim, Dan has recovered half an ounce of gold. That's approximately 900 Canadian dollars, from ground that 30,000 miners supposedly exhausted over a century ago. I'm keeping this claim kind of secret, Dan admits to a journalist who accompanied him on, an expedition. The amount of big gold I've found here is significant compared to any other claim. The Fraser River discovery proves something that most people don't want to believe. Worked out ground isn't always worked out. The old miners were thorough, but they weren't perfect. They missed spots. They overlooked terrain. They left gold behind. Dan Hurd found what they missed. The Pickerton nugget. Dan named his second most productive claim, Pickerton, for a very specific reason. It consistently produces pickers. In prospecting terminology, the hierarchy of gold goes roughly like this. Flour gold, fine dust. Flakes, small but visible pieces. Pickers, large enough to pick up by hand. And nuggets, substantial chunks. Most recreational prospectors spend their careers in the flour and flake category. Finding consistent pickers is rare. Finding nuggets is the dream that keeps people coming back. The Pickerton claim delivers both. The morning is cold, frost still clinging to the rocks along the creek. Dan's breath fogs in the air as he sets up his equipment.
My thought is that the water came through here and then dumped back down, taking any of the gold back down. And right at that mossy rock down there, there's a hollow, and that is the hottest spot.
His fingers are stiff, but his mind is already working, calculating where gold might have settled based on the terrain. He focuses on a section of bedrock near an inside bend of the creek. This is textbook gold territory. When water flows around a curve, it slows on the inside of the bend. Heavy material, including gold, drops out of the current and settles against the bedrock. Pan after pan, Dan works the material. Black sand accumulates in his pan, separating from the lighter gravel and sediment. The concentrate builds slowly, then he sees it. Sitting at the bottom of his pan, unmistakable against the dark sand, a nugget, 3 grams. Dan's hands stop moving. The only sound is the creek rushing over stones. 3 grams of gold is worth approximately $1,400 at current prices. But beyond the money, a 3-gram nugget represents something rare, the kind of find that validates years of learning, thousands of hours of practice, countless days that produce nothing. I found a 3-gram nugget at Pickerton, Dan writes on his website later, almost matter-of-factly. The understatement is typical Dan Hurd. He lets the gold speak for itself. The Pickerton claim has become legendary among his audience. Viewers know it as the location that produces chunky gold, consistent pickers, the kind of ground that rewards patience and skill. But success at Pickerton came with an unexpected price. Someone had been watching. The claim jumpers. Dan arrives at Pickerton on what should be a normal morning. Gear loaded in his vehicle, camera ready to document the day's work. Plans to explore a new section of the claim. Then he sees equipment that doesn't belong to him. Sluices, buckets, high bankers, professional-grade prospecting gear, all set up on his ground, all belonging to someone else. His stomach drops.
There we go, claim jumpers. If you want your stuff back, contact me. I'm gonna take the 2 classifiers, the pan, crowbar, and shovel. I don't know what else is around here.
Claim jumping, mining on someone else's staked and registered ground, without permission, is illegal in British Columbia. It's also deeply personal. This isn't simple trespassing, this is theft. Someone has been watching his videos, noting his results, and decided to help themselves to gold he spent years learning to find. The violation cuts deep. Dan has invested thousands of dollars in claim fees. He's spent countless hours walking this ground, learning its patterns, understanding where gold settles and why. Someone decided to skip all that work and simply take what he'd earned. Dan begins setting up cameras, hidden units positioned to record activity on his claims even when he's not present. If the claim jumpers return, he'll have evidence. The footage captures exactly what he feared: unauthorized miners working his ground, processing his gravel, extracting his gold, operating as if they had every right to be there. Dan contacts the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. What follows is an investigation that unfolds over several weeks. Dan documents everything meticulously: the unauthorized equipment, the disturbed ground, the clear evidence of systematic extraction. When officers finally arrive at Pickerton, Dan is present. He watches as the RCMP examines the scene, interviews the claim jumpers, and begins the process of enforcement. Equipment is confiscated. The unauthorized miners face legal consequences for what they've done. Illegal claim jumpers found at Pickerton, Dan posts afterward. Equipment confiscated. The words are measured, the emotions behind them are not. The experience fundamentally changes how Dan operates. More cameras, more vigilance, more awareness that his YouTube success has made him a target. When you show the world where gold is hiding, some people decide to skip the learning and go straight to the taking. But the claim jumpers don't stop Dan from working Pickerton. If anything, the confrontation strengthens his resolve. This is his ground. He found it. He earned it. He's not giving it up. The illegal ground sluice. October 2021, Dan is exploring a section of one of his claims that he hasn't worked in a while. The terrain is familiar, but something looks different. The ground appears disturbed, shaped in ways that don't match natural erosion patterns. There's a linearity to the features that suggests human intervention. Then recognition hits. He's looking at a ground sluice.
A sluice that was built right into the bedrock from miners in the past. Not allowed here in BC. You're not allowed to modify the creek bed, so that's why I call it an illegal ground sluice.
During the gold rush era, miners built ground sluices by digging channels into the earth. Running water would flow through these channels, separating gold from gravel through the simple physics of density. Heavy gold would settle to the bottom, while lighter material washed away. Ground sluices were effective. They were also environmentally destructive, which is why they're now prohibited under British Columbia's mining regulations. Someone built this sluice decades ago, probably during a period of less oversight. Then they abandoned it, leaving the structure to the elements. But here's what the original builder didn't realize. Their abandoned sluice kept working. Every spring, snowmelt sent water rushing through the channel. Every flood deposited new sediment. And every time, the heaviest material, including gold, settled into the sluice's natural traps. For years, possibly decades, this illegal structure had been quietly collecting treasure. Dan approaches with his camera rolling. He knows his mining inspectors watch his videos and check his claims. He'll need to remove this structure to remain compliant with current regulations. But first, he has to see what's inside. He works the accumulated material carefully. Sediment that has built up over years comes loose, flowing into his pan. Black sand concentrates as lighter material washes away. Then he sees it. Gold. Visible gold. Multiple pieces trapped in the sluice's natural collection points. It's old, it's in the right spot, and it's a sluice, Dan says, barely containing his excitement. It just has to be full. The best video documenting this discovery becomes one of his most popular ever, eventually racking up hundreds of thousands of views. Audiences are captivated by the unusual nature of the find. Gold recovered from an illegal structure that had been hiding in plain sight, collecting treasure automatically for years. I know my inspectors watch my videos and check my claims, Dan explains with characteristic transparency. So, to keep from getting in trouble for this ground sluice, I will be removing it. The honesty is pure Dan Hurd. Show the discovery, acknowledge the complication, do the right thing. But the gold remains real, and the discovery proves a principle that applies far beyond this single sluice. Gold doesn't disappear. It settles. It waits. It concentrates in places that trap heavy material. You just have to know where to look. These discoveries are truly shocking. Let's be clear about what makes Dan Hurd's discoveries genuinely shocking. Not just impressive, but actually difficult to believe. These finds came from exhausted ground. The Fraser River was worked by 30,000 desperate miners over a decade-long gold rush. Pickerton sits in territory that has been prospected for over 150 years. The illegal ground sluice was abandoned precisely because someone decided there was nothing left worth extracting. Dan found significant gold in all three locations. The explanation isn't luck, it's methodology. Dan reads landscapes the way skilled hunters read animal tracks. He understands how glacial movement shaped British Columbia's terrain thousands of years ago. He identifies pay streaks, the natural lines where gold concentrates as it moves through waterways, by analyzing how heavy materials behave in flowing water.
Ultra low water here, and seeing if I can find spots that I normally can't get to because they're underwater. Like, there's some good looking stuff down here.
When Dan approaches a riverbed, he doesn't just look at gravel. He observes the water's behavior. He studies how current moves around obstacles. He identifies the spots where flow slows and heavy material drops out of suspension. Sometimes, he can tell if the earth is hiding secrets just below the surface, one journalist observed after spending a day prospecting alongside Dan. He calls it his sixth sense for gold. That sixth sense is actually pattern recognition developed over thousands of hours. It's understood that gold is roughly 7 times heavier than the sand and gravel surrounding it. It's known that inside bends of rivers, the downstream sides of large boulders, and any location where water velocity decreases are prime settling zones. The geological indicators are consistent: black sands, quartz fragments, iron oxides. These clues point toward gold-bearing material. Most people don't recognize them. Dan does. Professional prospecting resources now cite Dan's methods as the industry standard. One widely read guide stated it directly. You could read that Dan Hurd quote about finding pay streaks and get 80% of the value of this entire section. The tools matter less than the knowledge. Behind them, a gold pan, a sluice, a metal detector. Anyone can purchase equipment. Not everyone can read the land. Half an ounce from a river that 30,000 miners abandoned. A 3-gram nugget from ground that experienced prospectors dismissed. Decades of gold from an illegal structure that kept collecting treasure long after its builder walked away. These are Dan Hurd's most shocking discoveries ever, and they share one crucial element. Every single find came from locations that everyone else had given up on. Dan is the first to admit that most days produced nothing. The majority of prospecting trips end with minimal results. A few flakes, some fine dust, maybe nothing at all. That reality is exactly why these discoveries matter. They stand out precisely because they're rare, because they require patience and skill, and the willingness to look where others stopped looking. The gold is still out there. After 160 years of mining in British Columbia, after the great rushes, came and went. After generations of prospectors worked these rivers and creeks and valleys, it's still there, hiding in crevices that the old miners didn't check, settling in claims they abandoned too soon, collecting in structures they left behind. We call him the Gold Hound, Pete Bricker said about his friend and fellow prospector. Maybe that's the perfect description. An instinct honed through years of dedicated work. A nose for gold that finds what everyone else misses. A teacher's patience combined with a treasure hunter's persistence. The Fraser River still holds secrets. The old claims still have gold. The worked-out ground isn't as empty as everyone believed. Dan Hurd keeps proving it. And that might be the most shocking discovery of all. If you want to see discoveries like these happen in real time, subscribe to Dan Hurd Prospecting. New expeditions and finds are documented regularly. The gold is out there, hiding in places everyone else walked past. Someone just has to find it.